Representative Brendan Guffey joins us here on Palmetto Mornings. That is because in South Carolina, we have a budget that has passed. Congratulations.
It took a little bit longer this year, as it did last year as well.
I was about to say, last year, y'all were like through the night, weren't you, at one point?
Well, every part of the budget can go very long, but the budget gets very confusing because there are so many different budgets. It's the same budget, but it's a working process. So the governor issues his first, comes to the House, and essentially all the agencies put in their request. That is what we vote on first. That's typically the longest portion. Then it comes back and goes to the Senate, which the Senate has more accurate numbers of what's coming in. So they start putting in their appropriations. And then once they pass, it comes back to the House for us to go through it again. And in this case, then it went to conference report after that because House and Senate couldn't agree, conference, and then we had to come back and vote on that.
The budget needs to be passed and in place by when? July 1st?
Supposed to be.
Okay.
Yes. But now there are emergency funds set aside for things such as schools that so they can continue to operate though.
And then how big is the budget? What's the dollar amount?
$42.2 billion this year. It was $41 billion last year. And that sounds astronomical, but the big thing that people need to understand that South Carolinians pay $14.4 billion. That is what comes from the state. The rest is from federal or other. So it is, while last year we spent $13.9 billion out of the state, so we went up a little bit, but we did have teacher pay raises across the board, which was huge. And that's part of that recurring fund that comes in. But earmarks were down significantly. Last year we spent, last year we spent $713 million in earmarks. This year it was $423 million. And that's money to come back to your district.
If you could describe the health of our financial state here in South Carolina, how would you grade us? What's the state of our financial health in the Palmetto State?
I think that we are healthy, but we are seeing a bit of a slowdown. South Carolina is lucky to be on the positive side of that. We have so many people moving here. I'm constantly joking about the people that are moving here, but it's a state that people want to be at.
It's a good problem to have.
Yes, and we're one of the things that I was most shocked at, because we always hear about, federal government goes over. So whenever I got elected, I didn't understand the budget, and people would talk about earmarks. It's like, no way I'll ever support anything like earmarks. I'm not going to vote for earmarks. What I didn't realize is South Carolina has a balanced budget amendment. So we are projecting on what's coming in. Even our tax cuts, we have $1 billion in tax cuts going back to South Carolinians this year. That is part of that $42 billion. So that gets included into it. So we can't leave money on the table. It depends on where it gets appropriated to.
Okay.
Speaking with Representative Brendan Guffey, we have a passed budget here in South Carolina. Representative Guffey, on your social media pages, you talked about the budget, but you also looked at four provisos. Is that
provisos?
That's it, provisos. Is there a better way of saying that? Can you come up with a better word than that?
Well, provisos are one of those things that it's not the proper way to legislate. But if you have an issue that you could not get through the House and the Senate in time, you can always attempt to put it in the budget as a one-year fix so we can address it moving forward. The problem is sometimes those provisos get kind of stuck in there year after year and reoccurring. But these provisos are not, I'm not looking at them as something of that nature, but, we had the bathroom situation.
Right. So it's not just a budget issue. It could be any kind of policy issue.
Correct.
Because that came up yesterday in the school board meeting that we had, or that they had, that there was a proviso that was made on that bathroom safety policy. I think they call it the JBAC policy. But
so we are through the budget, since we did not have enough time to get something passed, and this became an issue that we were seeing multiple districts deal with. And what we didn't want is our districts getting sued right away, so we put it in as a proviso in the budget to state that students must use the restroom of their birth gender or birth sex throughout all schools. So that can affect the funding of schools if they do not follow that policy.
And then in a year, y'all will have to revisit that?
It will be in the budget. I mean, depending on who's on the Ways and Means, but it should stay in there as a proviso. However, if we pass legislation, then it comes out of the budget as a proviso.
Another point is age-appropriate books will have to be in their section of public libraries as opposed to children's section.
Yeah, and we passed that with schools already, but we didn't assign it within our public libraries. So this allows it for the state-funded libraries as well.
And that came up within the last year here in York County. So
Yes.
that just means that they're not removing books from the shelves. They're just putting them in the sections
Correct.
that are age appropriate.
Yeah, and the argument's always, well, I believe in talking to my kid about sex at 10 years of age. Well, this is clearly defined in law. As I said on the regulations committee, we had an attorney come in whenever Ellen Weaver was doing this with schools, and people were very upset. But it is defined in law in what is appropriate or what is inappropriate. And so our current books already are upheld to that. So people were talking about we're going to be banning all these books. No, this just sticks to the current law that is there, and we will move them to the sections that they need to be in.
So they can still get those books. They're just in a different section.
It just requires a parent to come in with you.
Right.
Okay.
And then the last one, or the fourth one, was private school kids can now play sports for the public school that they are zoned for, just like homeschool.
Yeah, and this
kids can.
this became a personal thing for myself and Senator Clymer. We were pushing hard for this because we had situations such as Providence Classical. So if you wanted to send your kid to a Christian school, they were not able to participate in sports. So therefore, and mental health being one of my big things, I always say in order to change an emotion, you got to create motion, and sports are a great way to do that. And these schools are not large enough to pay to join the high school league, but yet if you were homeschooled, you could go. You could go and participate and try out for these sports. But for some reason, just because you're going to one of these Christian schools, you can't. Now, there is an issue in the Low Country where people are using this to get within schools that they shouldn't be. So we made sure that we said also public schools can participate in private school sports. So if someone did a rowing team or something of that nature as well, they have to pay for their own equipment, so they have to pay for the additional fees. But it just gives them the ability, and they have to be zoned within that school.
And it has to not be at their particular school. So, like, you couldn't go, I'm just going to use a local school. You can't go to Westminster and if they have a soccer team, instead play soccer at South Point.
Correct.
If they have it. So it has to be that the option is not available at the school
Correct.
that you attend.
And this is primarily, if you said Westminster and then you said, say, swimming, I don't know that Westminster has
Right.
a swimming team.
Right.
But you would be zoned for Rock Hill High if you're in Laurel Creek. Rock Hill High may have a swimming team. That gives you the ability to compete for that.
Great.
Another one was the policy of getting rid of cell phones in public schools. This seems to have got a lot of traction across the state. A lot of school districts seem like they were pushing for this.
People were torn on it, and I understand, but one of the biggest problems that we have with our teachers is saying that administrators don't back them up. And then we started seeing teachers getting attacked that tried to remove cell phones from students, just with the way that people are treating teachers nowadays. So, Rock Hill schools addressed this early. They were, at the forefront of this. And this isn't saying that we are banning cell phones within public schools, but there are signs showing the negative effects of screen time on our youth. It's causing a lot of the anxiety. It's causing the mental health crisis, and it's causing the ADHD or ADD where people can't pay attention. This gives the Board of Education the ability to do so if they choose, and for us to back them up within the budget. So we're not doing the ban. This would allow the Board of Education to make that decision.
Again, those are just 4 points I know you pointed out. Was there any other points of interest just for folks in the state of South Carolina, or maybe more specifically for our part of the state?
Some of the great things, to me, we talked about raising pay for teachers. We've got that up now to a starting pay across the state at $47,000. We've got $20 million in school safety initiatives, which is huge. We had $5 million in for school mapping systems. So our first responders know where to go within these schools if an issue pops up. $28 million in lottery funds towards buses, $24 million for pre-K First Steps program. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but those are some of the major ones, and all of those kind of go around that. But another big one was our C funds for our local roads. We put a lot of money in roads and bridges this year, but there's $200 million going to the CTCs, which comes back to our counties to decide where best to spend that. And I think our county council members know which roads need to be addressed first, so that's good to increase that.
Well, we certainly appreciate Representative Guffey for breaking down the state budget. It is a mammoth piece of legislation, and thank you so much for breaking down and explaining some of these line items in more detail, especially to our audience here in this part of the state. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.